Peace, love, and light, everyone. I hope all is well. This is your girl, Serena Wills, and welcome to another segment of poetry, publishing, and literary artistry. I am a four-time self-published author. For those who don't know me, I'm a poet and a spoken word artist. I'm a publishing coach, and I also write fiction, nonfiction. I also do health and wellness articles as well for different magazines and publications. And today, on today's segment, we're going to learn about a form of poetry. Yes, there are over 50 forms of poetry that we know of in the world. And one of those forms of poetry is called a Cleave poem. Cleave, Cleave. And people are like, okay, this sounds a little scary. Okay. So for those who tuned in to other seasons, learned about free verse, we also learned about pantoum poems, Pantoum. So I'm going to teach y'all different forms of poetry. And today we're going to learn about cleave. So a cleave is when you write two separate poems, as you see on the screen. One poem is on one side and one poem is on the other. So these are two separate poems, and they have mirroring lines. And then you bridge the two poems together to create a masterpiece and a master poem. So the lines mirror each other, but the goal, okay, is to merge it all into one big poem. How are we going to do that? Okay. So when I learned this in a wonderful class I took during the pandemic and still take, writing to wellness, shout out to spoken word artist and poet C. Thomas. Um, Christopher Alexandria Bernard Thomas, shout out to you. Um, yes, we learned about Cleave, and we never knew what the writing prompt was going to be for the evening. It was always a surprise. Okay. So you can imagine my face when I said, what do you mean I got to write two poems, mirroring lines? And, and they have to, we have to now merge it into one master poem. And we're going to do all this in 2 hours. Okay. So in this particular poem, the title is Mirror Image. Now, Mirror Image, I decided to do a poem that was a reflection. Who is my reflection? In this poem, I'm talking about myself and my mother in this poem. God rest my mom's soul. And I know if she was here, she would say, wow, Serena, yep, that was us. And I will tell you the story after we go through our lesson and read through the master poem. So, how do you write a cleave? So, we start off with the first line, like anything. So, I start off with poem one, line one, reflection stares through my soul. And now, the way I do it, I like to have two separate pieces of paper, or I have a journal, and I have, okay, this is cleave one, cleave two. All right, poem one, poem two. So, I write the first line on one side, and I hop to the next page and say, okay, what's going to be the first line, the opener for the second poem, but it has to mirror the last line so it could all flow together eventually. So our beauty runs through our veins like two racing rivers that eventually connect came to mind. All right, that's line one for both poems. Now on to line two. I go back to poem one. We are alike. We are alike in many ways. Then I went over to poem two. Passionate about some of the same. So I'm like, okay, did it click automatically? No, it did not. What did I do first? I tried to write two separate poems and then try to go back and tweak them. And it was a lot of going back and forth because I wrote another cleave besides this one. So this was the one where I said, okay, two separate pages and let's go back and forth. It's a unique dance. So, line three, as hard as it is, I've accepted after going through this maze. And then line three is not easy to admit. It's not easy to admit that I've been going through this crazy maze. What is the maze? We're going to find out. Line four, back to poem one. Both have loved hard. Both is me and my mother. Okay. And after years of loving, so I said, okay. And as we do this, I have to read it this way too. So I read starting from the top, our beauty runs through our veins, da da da, passionate about some of the same, not easy to admit. And after years of loving, okay, that sounds good as a poem, a standalone, but it sounds good going across. All right. Then line five, but to the wrong, love that was misdirected. So you're seeing what I'm doing. Back and forth, back and forth. It is like a very intricate dance. Okay. And you cannot miss the step. Okay. If you miss something, you're like, oh no, it doesn't flow. And the goal is we want it to flow, we want it to sound right. And I remember with this particular poem, after I wrote it, I went back and had to flush it out. I said, okay, there's something missing. I remember flushing out, adding a line here or there. And that's what many writers and poets do. We go back and we flush things out. Something comes to us after we walk away from it. But that is the Cleave. The first poem is poem number one. Then we have poem number two. We're writing across at the same time. So it sounds right writing across, but they both have to be standalones. So I'm not going to leave you there. We're going to see what the master looks like. All right. So here is the master poem. And what I did was I highlighted the first couple of lines. So the one in yellow highlight are the first lines of each poem. Reflection stares through my soul is poem number one. Our beauty runs through our veins like two racing rivers that eventually connect is the first line of poem number two. The blue highlight is the second lines. We are alike in many ways. That's poem number one. Passionate about the same. That is from poem number two, and so on and so forth. So each of these have a pairing as they're coming from the first poem and the second poem. The goal is to now put it all together the same way, right? So it all poem one, poem two, poem one, poem two. So I'm going to read this now as a master poem. Reflection stares through my soul. Our beauty runs through our veins like two racing rivers that eventually connect. We are alike in many ways, passionate about the same. As hard as it is, I've accepted after going through this maze, not easy to admit. Both have loved hard after years of loving, but to the wrong, love that was misdirected. The men we've attracted came a few shapes and forms. Those smiles and charm, good lines and gentle touches that were the best, with harmful vices, womanizing mindsets, mentally or emotionally beaten, but we were captivated by their smooth talk and swag. This came with masked baggage, devious spirits. They were liars and verbal abusers, thinking that we could fix them, putting on our emotional carpentry belts, hung around even after discovering, while investing too much time into a love that is steadily crumbling. Finally, after many years noticing that our love was taken for granted as we kept falling, falling, falling in love with the deceitful ones. I'm going to give myself some snaps for that. Okay. So in poetry, we do snaps. Okay. Where did this poem come from? Mirror image. During the pandemic, we had a lot of time, as you all know, to sit with ourselves. And some did not want to do this. Some did not want to sit with themselves and go and do a deep dive, do a field trip within to see what's going on in me. I need to heal. There's still some healing happening that needs to happen. And then there was questions of myself asked. And I'm a poet, so I put my feelings out there because someone out there is like, oh, she is saying my story. Why do I keep attracting the same guys? And why are they attracted to me? Okay. I'm beautiful, yes. And I have a light about me and all of that. But what is it? And why do I feel like I could fix them? And the emotional carpentry belts came to mind, and how we hang around sometimes a little too long. I looked a bit deeper, and I don't have my mother here with me to have this conversation. And I said, I learned I learned from her. And it's no wrong. She was a loving woman, a light about her. And sometimes our light attracts people, but it's when the attraction becomes draining. And we start to stick around too long and we're investing because we want them to be their best selves. We want them to heal. We want to be in love with this person. We see the what it could look like. But this is where we kept falling and falling. And some were deceitful, but some really had a lot going on and didn't even know where to start. But some were deceitful. Some went to vices, where there was substances to help them. Some were womanizers. Some were verbal abusers. I will put it out there. But it was a mirror image. Now, there's poems that came after this. What now happens? How do you start the healing process? Well, go back to season 2 and you can hear Marathon to Inner Peace, that poem. So I decided to use 2 poems in a cleave, turn it into one, and it became the masterpiece. So you can see when I wrote this, 2021, a lot of healing has happened. So that's my time for today. Ooh, heavy one. Ooh, yes, Serena, that was heavy. Okay. But you've learned how to write a cleave. I challenge you. Get 2 pieces of paper or get a journal or a notebook, whatever, and get to writing and see if you can put together a cleave poem. And reach out to me, DM me on my social media platforms. I'm Divine Wright, DivineWryte. That's my stage name and spoken word name. It's also the name of my health and wellness coaching practice. Um, and you can go to my website, serenawills.com, SerenaWills.com. And, check me out. I have workshops. I have recorded workshops. You could download them and reach out to me. Let me know when you write that first cleave or you're attempting to write it. I want to know how you're doing. Okay. So that is my time for today. Take good care. Stay tuned for other segments. And one love, everyone. Take care. Bye for now. Those.